It's tick season, the time of year when these problematic pests proliferate and spread a variety of diseases. Among them, Lyme disease is a particular concern. It is estimated that approximately 476,000 people in the US develop Lyme disease every year. But are some people more at risk for infection than others? Why are cases of Lyme disease increasing, and is there a vaccine to prevent infection? Recent scientific advancements provide insights into all of these questions and more. Welcome to Microbial Minutes, the American Society for Microbiology's update on what's hot in the microbial sciences. I'm Madeline Barron, Science Communication Specialist at ASM. Before we dive into today's video, please take a moment to fill out the survey linked in the description. It's 5 questions, takes less than 3 minutes, and your answers will help us make better videos. We appreciate the support. Okay, so first off, what is Lyme disease? The culprit behind this infection is Borrelia burgdorferi, a bacterium transmitted via the bite of blacklegged ticks, also known as deer ticks. B. burgdorferi lives in the guts of ticks where it is then regurgitated into a new host during a blood meal. In the US, most Lyme disease cases occur in northeastern states, north central states, namely Wisconsin and Minnesota, and the Northwest. And people are most at risk from late spring through summer. The disease is also found in parts of Europe and Asia. If untreated, Borrelia infection can proceed through various stages, each with different symptoms. Early on, someone may experience a fever, chills, or the bullseye rash associated with Lyme disease. As the bacteria disseminate in the body, severe headaches, facial palsy, neck stiffness, nerve pain, and more can arise. These symptoms occur as the host deploys defenses against Borrelia to try and get rid of it. Now, not everyone is equally at risk for contracting Lyme disease. Of course, geographic location is a key player, as certain regions do not harbor deer ticks and thus the diseases they transmit. Behaviors, too, can increase someone's risk of infection. For example, outdoor activities like hiking on wooden trails or gardening and walking in tall grasses. However, there may be biological underpinnings to infection risk too, with sweat, of all things, playing a role. Recently, scientists combed through genetic data from thousands of people and discovered that a mutated version of a gene that encodes a protein in sweat called SCGB1D2 was associated with increased susceptibility for Lyme disease. About 40% of people have this genetic variant, characterized by a single swap in an amino acid in the protein sequence, and is predicted to abrogate its function. Notably, a recombinant reference version of the protein that did not have this mutation inhibited growth of Borrelia in vitro more efficiently and at much lower concentrations than the mutated version. Moreover, when the researchers injected the recombinant reference protein into mice along with Borrelia, it prevented infection. The findings suggest that the protein is a host defense factor in the skin that protects against Lyme disease. And, consequently, people with the mutated version may not have this protection. The scientists know that there is a lot more left to learn here, and more work is needed to determine if and how the protein is protective in the context of an actual tick bite, though the results point to a possible new mechanism to drive therapeutic development. In the meantime, antibiotics are the name of the game when it comes to treating Lyme disease. If caught early, people can make a full and quick recovery. There are a variety of antibiotics used. Doxycycline is the most common in the US, and treatment usually lasts 10 to 14 days. Early treatment prevents severe disease, for example, the onset of neurological complications, carditis, or arthritis. These later conditions can also be treated, though they may have lasting effects. Treatment also has implications for the function of the host's immune response. Borrelia is adept at evading and suppressing host immune responses, which facilitates its persistence in the host as well as obviates development of long-term immunity against the bacterium. People can and are reinfected if they become bitten by another tick harboring Borrelia. This suppression also influences the ability of the host to mount a response against other antigens. For example, a recent study found that mice infected with B. burgdorferi and then immunized against SARS-CoV-2 spike protein had an abrogated antibody response to the immunization. Borrelia-mediated suppression of spike protein antibody responses continued for 6 weeks post-infection. However, antibiotic treatment caused the humoral response to become similar to animals that had not been infected, suggesting the presence of live bacteria were important for immune modulation. Still, there were signs that even in post-antibiotic treatment, aspects of the immune response, namely levels of IgM antibodies, continued to differ from uninfected animals. Within that vein, there is a subset of people with Lyme disease, roughly 10 to 20%, though estimates vary, who still have symptoms even after antibiotic treatment. Such post-treatment Lyme disease, or PTLD, may include persistent pain, fatigue, cognitive impairment, and more. The mechanisms underlying development of PTLD are unclear. One hypothesis is that it stems from maladaptive responses to infection that persist past bacterial killing. It could also be tied to persistence of the bacteria themselves. Scientists are still working on figuring this out. In any case, what is readily observable is that cases of Lyme disease are increasing. In 2022, there were nearly 63,000 cases of Lyme disease reported to the CDC by state health departments. This was 69% more than the annual US average in 2017 through 2019. In general, cases of tick-borne diseases are on the rise. There are various reasons for this. For example, the development of natural areas brings people and animals harboring ticks and the pathogens they carry closer together, providing more opportunities for transmission. However, in this case, the CDC points to changes in surveillance practices for the increased number of reported cases rather than increased risk itself. Prior to 2022, states where Lyme disease cases are particularly concentrated had to gather clinical data on each person who had a positive blood test result for Lyme disease before reporting the case. Now, all that's needed is a positive blood test, which tests for antibodies to the bacteria causing the disease. The goal was to minimize work on healthcare workers, to make reporting more sustainable, and as a result, more cases are being captured than before. In low incidence areas, clinical data are still required. But the number of reported cases is a far cry from actual estimates. According to the CDC, there are likely close to 476,000 people who are diagnosed with Lyme disease every year, but the cases aren't reported. The organization emphasizes a need for greater infection prevention. And a vaccine would be a valuable addition to the infection prevention toolbox. There is a Lyme disease vaccine for dogs, and there used to be one for humans too, but it was discontinued in 2002 due to, as cited by the company, insufficient consumer demand. Today, researchers are working to fill that gap, and there are various clinical trials underway to explore Lyme disease vaccine candidates. One candidate by Pfizer and the vaccine company Valneva is particularly promising. The protein subunit vaccine, called VLA15, targets the outer surface protein A, or OSPA, of B. burgdorferi. Most Lyme disease vaccines do. The protein is conserved among B. burgdorferi strains and is needed for the bacterium to exit the tick gut. Antibodies against OSPA travel into the tick during feeding, bind to the bacteria, and prevent them from leaving and causing infection. VLA15 showed strong safety and immunogenicity profiles in phase 1 and 2 clinical trials in children and adults. A phase 3 trial including 9,000 participants is currently underway, with the goal of confirming the vaccine's safety, efficacy, and immunogenicity. Trial results are expected in 2025, and, barring positive findings, the vaccine will be submitted to the FDA and EMA for licensing in 2026. Until then, preventing Lyme disease requires taking steps to avoid tick bites altogether. Practices like using insect repellent, avoiding tall grasses, and staying in the middle of trails during hiking, showering soon after coming inside, checking for ticks daily, vaccinating dogs against Lyme disease, and controlling ticks in your backyard by, for instance, removing leaf litter and clearing tall grasses are your best bets for staying healthy. That's all for today, and don't forget to take the survey linked in the description. Thank you for listening. Thank Ray Ortega for production, and I will talk to you soon.